Hey guys, this is Marc Goldberg from Marc Vlogs Watches, and you have just joined another exciting episode. Today we are going to go through the last video that I made, and we're going to examine all of the interesting comments and questions that have been asked, and I'm going to respond to as many of them as possible. Now, that video is called Regulate a Watch versus Service a Watch, When, Where, and Why, and I will put a link to that video in the description, because if you haven't seen it, you're going to want to do that maybe even prior to watching this video right here. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, let's go ahead and get the quick fist watch check out of the way. And here it is. Today I am wearing a Rolex Submariner. This is a ceramic version that I purchased on eBay not even all that long ago for a slightly under MSRP full kit. So, you know, if you're patient and if you're a hunter and if you're like the spider looking for the fly, once in a while there's still a reasonable deal available to you out there. But I digress. It's time to look at the comments and talk about yesterday's video about regulating a watch versus servicing a watch, and when should you do either of those things. So, before we jump right into that, let me just quickly define terms. To regulate a watch is when a watchmaker takes the back off and tinkers a little bit with the mechanism in order to slow it down or speed it up to make it closer to the 0 point of accuracy. Okay, and this can be done to most watches. Now, before doing it, they have to test it in order to determine exactly what's going in on there, and they have a timograph machine in order to do that. That's what regulation is, and it's usually a fairly economical process because it doesn't take too long. On the other hand, an overhaul, or what's called a full service, is where the watchmaker opens the back and literally pulls the crown, removes the entire movement, and then breaks it down and takes it apart. And these movements have 200 plus pieces in them, and every one of those movements has to be cleaned, examined for wear, repaired, replaced, etc., and put it back together. So to overhaul, and then it has to be relubricated. So to overhaul a mechanism, a watch movement, is a great deal more involved than to regulate. And watch yesterday's video for more detail. From time to time, you're going to see me looking down at my computer as I read to you some of the more interesting comments and questions. Joey Ben makes the comment, if accuracy bothers you, then you must love your Grand Seiko spring drive diver. And indeed I do. The spring drive diver is, well, first let me drop a picture of the watch in right here. So the movement in that watch is a quartz mechanical hybrid, but I think of it slightly more as a quartz movement because it uses a quartz crystal and then some electronics, electromagnets, to regulate the time. The power for the watch is provided by a mainspring with a rotor, which is the same way that the power is supplied to this Rolex Submariner and pretty much all automatic mechanical watches, right? But due to the fact that the spring drive uses a quartz, I think of it more as a quartz mechanism, uses some mechanical components specifically to avoid using a battery. And I do like it. It's deadly accurate, but does it really have a soul? Okay, so 120 Clicks has the following suggestion. In the prior video, I mentioned that I'm a little OCD about the time, and if the watch runs out of spec, whatever it's spec'd to run, it's going to bother me. So that's why I would overhaul or regulate a watch. So 120 Clicks says, well, just set your watch 5 to 10 minutes fast. Learned that one from my uncle. He was never late, and it works. Well, okay, 120 clicks, yeah, certainly that's going to work. But it sort of doesn't take into account the OCD, which is strong in this one right here. Accuracy, that's what I'm after. I'm not after tricks. I'm not going to say I've never taken a watch that was running slow and set it ahead fast, but I would do that like maybe 5 to 10 seconds so I could just buy a couple of days out of there. ABM0 Rose says, Marc is always obsessed with bezel click. Well, in the prior video, I was wearing a Tudor and I let you hear the bezel and I talked a lot about the bezel. And yes, I'm obsessed by it. I think it's one of the primary delightful things. Look what I'm doing here. It's tactile, it's touchy-feely. And I feel that the Rolex bezel with its uber fine click and the is the standard. It's the gold standard for 120 click bezel, and the Tudor Pelagos and the Tudor Black Bay with its highly definitive, rocket-like accuracy, perfect ratcheting movement for a 60 click bezel is perfect within its genre. Now I gotta fix this because, like I said, OCD, right? Let me zero this out or I will be unable to go on. Got it. Okay, next. Blue Shirt Buddha says, thanks for another informative video, Mark. Love the content and the channel, but you need to pick another catchphrase. Paul Thorpe is already using welcome back, watch people. Well, I'm stealing it, okay, Blue Shirt Buddha, because Paul has been using numerous of my videos as inspiration. That's quite clear. Paul, thank you for watching my channel, but I'll give it back to him eventually, but I think I'm gonna steal that for another week or two. Hey guys, it's all in good fun. Albert Pergler says, hi Mark, good subject. I am about to service my 9 years young Oris Dive watch. Got a quote for service, which was only €250. Why I wanted to service it is because I noticed some patina / oxidation. I think that means rust, people. I don't think we would call it, oxidation is rust. I don't think we would call it patina. On my minute arm. So probably some seal issues. Yeah, I would be worrying about what's happening inside that watch and the movement, and yeah, I'd be worrying about this. So probably some seal issues. So altogether, the cost will be like €400. I don't know why it jumped from 250 to 400, but €400, and he says, that's almost half the price I paid for it new. It's my pride and joy, but I'm not sure what to do. And Albert, I think this is a really common problem, and frankly, you have just brought up the issue of what happens when it's not worth doing a service. You know, so like if you have a Seiko with an NH35 movement in it, and you paid $400 or $500 for the watch, and now it's getting flaky and it's time to service it, you might as well just throw it out and start over again. And that's the problem with watches in the price range of that Oris. You know, it's almost not worth servicing it unless you have an emotional attachment to that watch. Like if it was your father's, or if you bought it for a special occasion, your wife, your girlfriend, your mistress, you know, somebody bought it for you that you care about, then, you know, yeah, go ahead and spend the €400. But quite frankly, if it's just a watch and you liked it and you got some good years out of it, but now the thing is a bit of a mess, throw it in a drawer and go get something else. But ideally, get something better, get something worth. It's like buying a car. You know, it's like buying a Yugo, right? If you buy some like super cheap beater and the tires go out, well, the tires are worth more than the car. So you might as well just throw it out and start all over again. That's what you should do here, I think, unless you love that Oris. Sorry about the bad news, but that's how I see it. Lester Loves Watches says, buy a case back opener, buy a time grapher, time the watch on the time grapher. This is basically how the watchmakers do it. Tap the two arms on the balance wheel very gently to regulate the timing and the beat error. You can test this in multiple positions. So what Lester is doing here is giving us the process by which the watchmakers or really skilled amateurs go in and regulate watches. If you improve 10 watches like this, you've spent about $10 per watch, plus it's fun. Don't scratch your case back though. Lester, they don't trust me with power tools. I mean, you know, I have a chainsaw because, like, look around you, all these trees and stuff. I do have a chainsaw, but when I'm using that thing, let me tell you what, I am like a grandma. I am like super careful because in my mind, I'm constantly like slicing my foot off. Opening the case back for me is a really bad idea. I'm sure I would have parts left over. Things would spring out of that. You know what's under that case back, Lester? To you, you look at the case, you look in there, you see every aspect of the movement. As far as I'm concerned, you know what's under the case back of this watch? Snakes. And if I open it, they're gonna like leap out, and yeah, I have no way am I opening a watch. And frankly, I do not recommend that to anybody watching this video now, unless you're highly experienced or you're willing to experiment on cheapy watches. Because even the dust in your environment can, like, you know, the dirt, the crud, the dust can, like, I know this from watching Fernando, shout out, watch his channel too. But like if you open the case back and there's junk in the environment or on that case back and that crud gets into the movement, well, you could pretty well destroy your whole movement that way. So I don't recommend this. But Lester, if you really know what you're doing, you're a better man than I. Scott SJ says, I like the ETA Tudor more than the in-house movement. He's talking about my Burgundy Black Bay. Let's throw a picture in here. which I talked quite a bit about in the prior video about regulating a watch, because I did have that one regulated. And yeah, I like that one better than the newer version as well. Even though, he says, Scott continues, even though the in-house movement has a fantastic power reserve, which is true, it goes from like 42 in the ETA to 70. The reason being the ETA is thinner and it's lighter weight. His wrist is small, so he prefers the same one that I do. And I am with you on this, Scott. I really much prefer the older ETA version of the Tudor, which is unusual because in most things, I really want to see an in-house movement, but not on that one. Robert Sullivan says, oh my God, Mark, stop rambling and stay on topic. Robert, I'm waffling. I mean, like I'm a storyteller, I'm a raconteur. We should have a beer together. You'll never shut me up. Staying on topic is not my thing, but thank you for being with me and thanks for the suggestion. Now, I love the name on this next subscriber, Bulla Crustulum. Let me drop that in here so you can see how it's spelled. Bulla Crustulum. Preventative maintenance will save money in the long run. You should service every 3 to 5 years depending on how much you wear it. Watches are little machines. The lubricants need to be replaced, just like an oil change on the car. Otherwise, it can cause unnecessary wear and damage to the movement. Mechanical watches are luxury in this day and age. It is your watch. You can do whatever you want, but you probably wouldn't buy a Rolls Royce and say, oh, I don't need to change the oil every 3,000 miles if it's still, read more, if it's still running okay. I'll wait till it hits 20,000. Take care of your gear and it will take care of you. Well, Bulla Crustulum, that is the party line, and I can't say that it's stupid what you're saying, because I know that technically it's correct. But hey, I'm the guy who I'm going to run these watches until they start to do something a little weird or run out of spec. And that's when I'm going to get it overhauled and serviced. And I have done that, and once in a while it needs a little part, or a rotor bushing or a bearing, something's worn out and does need replacement. And the cost of doing that at the 15-year mark was a lot cheaper than doing 3 unnecessary services. So yeah, sorry. I'm still holding to my opinion. However, you, sir, are definitely qualified to run a fleet of watches and vehicles, much more so than I. Mark Michael says, Mark, can you recommend a good fur coat for me? No, Michael. No, I can't. Ivan Kerr says, yeah, of course you don't of course you don't overhaul them every 5 years. You don't even keep them for 5 years. You're constantly flipping them. Well, that's not especially true. There's a core part of my collection which is composed primarily of Rolex, and they are my long-term babies. Sometimes other things come and go because I try and like them as much as my Rolex, and usually I fail. Booser says, with modern build quality and oils, it's safe to wait longer than 5 years to service a watch. And Booser, I am with you, sir. Jonathan L. says, my beef with servicing is the grinding and polishing of the case and bracelet. One gets back a watch that used to have a sharp, crisp edge, and they are now rounded. I understand that Rolex will do that even if it's not requested. I also hear stories of switched out dials. Please tell me that I have heard incorrect information. Well, Jonathan L., the problem is I can't tell you that. It is accurate what you are saying here under certain circumstances or conditions. So first of all, the short version of my answer is don't service a vintage Rolex with Rolex, because the Rolex Service Center will want to restore that watch to brand new spec. And in so doing, they are likely to wipe out a lot of the value of the watch, right? So they don't want to see patina on the hands. They don't want to see dead lume on the hour markers and so forth. So they will swap out the dials, the hands. They will make it look like new, but if it's a 30, 40-year-old watch, you didn't want it to look like new. You just wanted it to work right. So you would find an independent watchmaker for that. Now, when you are servicing a modern, like this modern ceramic Submariner, if I wanted to send it to the Rolex Service Center, have it serviced but not polished, in theory they will do that, but like you, I've heard stories where they were ignored. So I think you take your luck, the luck of the draw, when you service directly with Rolex. Well, guys, that has been the gist of it. I appreciate your joining me on this one. I'm going to start responding to the comments in a lot of my videos, because what it does is it allows me to have that interchange with you. And yeah, if you've got anything to say further about this topic, stick it in the comments of this video. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't done that yet, please go ahead and do it now. And hey, once again, welcome back, Watch Nuts. This is Goldberg. Peace out.
Paint the sky.